Ladies and gentlemen, this is MainOne. Can we please put hands together? Enabling West Africa's digital economy. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me the great honor to invite a disruptor, someone that came into a Nigerian, came into Nigeria 2005 and discovered that there were a lot of opportunities here. She is a gem. She has disrupted a lot of things that has happened since 2005. She came back to Nigeria. It gives me the great honor, ladies and gentlemen, in case you're wondering what I'm talking about, the CEO herself of MainOne. Please put your hands together as I invite Ms. Funke Opeke as she comes to give us the CEO's remark. Can we please put hands together for this amazing gem? A mentor to mentor, so celebrate you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Nerds Unite 2019. It is such a pleasure to have so many of you here joining us, our customers, our partners, and our friends who are deciding to spend the day with us, exploring what is new, and of course, pondering the future. It is going to be a digitally transformed future. It is inevitable. I think we all agree that we're always going to be connected and that we're going to be fully connected. As enablers of this digital transformation, our agenda as MainOne today is for us to jointly explore how we progress that digital transformation and ensure that we all continue to derive maximum value for ourselves and for our businesses as we further integrate into the global information value chain. How would our lives and businesses be transformed if everyone in Nigeria could be online? How secure would our communities be when everyone could be easily identified? How about the ability to authorize and pay for transactions and various kinds of services? How will the existing order of our businesses be disrupted? That is the mission that MainOne is enabling in West Africa. To further that mission, as an example, earlier today, we launched in partnership with Avanti Communications, a new satellite communications offering that will connect those hard-to-reach places in Nigeria using the latest Ka-band satellite technology. Already, we have the services deployed to an oil-producing asset in the Niger Delta, and you can imagine that many more of those production areas will be better equipped because of the services we're about to deploy. In addition, we certainly can think of a lot of our academic institutions in far-flung places in the northern parts of Nigeria and the southernmost parts of Nigeria, where it is expensive and difficult to reach with fiber technology that will be enabled with the services. As you all know, we're in the connectivity business, and if it is coming from us, along with our partner Avanti, it can only be of the highest quality. But you also know that it is no longer just about connectivity, as broadband rates in our society continue to grow, and we contemplate the impact of getting everyone connected. How do we advance our lives and businesses with these connections? What happens when we put the big data resulting from all this online presence to use? Certainly, there is good use, and there could be bad use. But how could this data be utilized by our businesses and our governments? How about global multinationals who do not operate within our territories? How do we plug ourselves into the value chain so that as a world which is now full of all these digitally mediated real-time interventions, ensure that we are a critical part of delivering value and services to consumers in our market, and not just in our market, in all parts of the globe. Where do we fit? Where do our Nigeria-based businesses fit in the hierarchy of global companies who dominate the big data landscape today? Where do we play? How do we play? How much value can we derive for ourselves and our businesses? It is no longer about how big your data center is, but how quickly can you roll that new service offering to market? How quickly can you roll out that payments platform? How quickly can you roll out that customer engagement platform? How quickly can you monitor inventory in real time so that you are tapping into new areas of demand across the country and in new markets? How do you gain advantage over your competitors who are trying to do the same thing? How do you engage your customers before their loyalty switches to some other product or service that is marketed to them by their friends on social media? How effectively do you use cloud services to achieve bottom line results today? Later this afternoon, we will be presenting our managed cloud services in the MDXI booth. You may want to stop by and you'll find out how your competitors or government agencies like the Corporate Affairs Commission are rolling out new digital services in less than 30 days. That is probably a lot shorter than you can add a new feature if you were working on one of your legacy systems. I hope we understand. Before the session on cloud at the MDXI booth, which comes much later in the afternoon, we have wonderful panels and some fantastic speakers lined up for you. We will explore various themes, including artificial intelligence. Be it Leo or Anna, we have all these voice assistants that are taking off in our financial sector with our banks, insurance companies, and asset managers offering us new products, and we can actually walk through these assistants to open up the accounts as well. Then you start to wonder, when I was growing up, the bank branch manager was king. But do you need a bank branch manager anymore? Or is the bank payments channel specialist actually more important because they drive higher value for the bank and certainly much more value in terms of the number and the value of those transactions? In another session, we will also talk about moving your processing to cloud. I'd like to ask a question. How many people here, if you could give me a show of hands, run their office automation today in the cloud? So you're using Office 365 or Mobile 365 or something of that nature. Can you, is that it, or we're being shy about putting up our hands? So about half the audience, I would say if I asked that question 12 or 18 months ago, we probably would have had less than 5% of the population. But what we are seeing from where we stand in the ecosystem are massive shifts in the last 12 to 18 months to the cloud, not just of office automation, but functional business applications. Finally, what are our startups doing to take advantage of these new technologies? How many are building apps on AWS Heroku, the leading cloud application platform? I learned a few days ago that Flutterwave, which is one of the more successful startups that has rapidly evolved out of the Nigerian tech ecosystem in recent years, actually built its app on that platform. What are we doing to take advantage of these technologies and ensure we're not left behind in this ever-changing world? Are we scaling? Are we meeting the needs of the market? What are the challenges we have in extending broadband to all parts of Nigeria so that other citizens could also benefit from the access that we have in Lagos. We do not claim in MainOne to have all the answers, but we know that we have a very powerful ecosystem of partners, customers, and friends who have like minds, who are able to innovate and execute. And those partners, our ecosystem, is represented in this room with us today. By choosing to engage with our ecosystem, we hope that together we can find answers to these interesting questions and ponder how digital transformation will impact each of us individually and the businesses that we represent. I wish that everyone will have a wonderful time with us today at Nerds Unite 2019, and that you will remain committed to building our ecosystem to create a fully connected and digitally transformed Nigeria. Thank you very much and welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, can we please put hands together for the CEO of MainOne? I appreciate. And now she's giving us this charge, we'd like to show you one more video, and then we introduce our keynote speaker for today. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, I'd like to welcome you to Nerds Unite 2019. Can we celebrate ourselves? Can we please put our hands together for ourselves? It gives me the great honor to recognize and read a little profile of our keynote speaker. He's so special to us. He is an editor-in-chief and the publisher of Stuff, a Forbes contributor, and a Financial Mail columnist. He has been writing about technology and the internet for 20 years, and his third global talk on innovation in Africa has over 1.5 million views. As of yesterday when I checked, it's 1,512,336 as of yesterday when I checked. And he has nearly as many views as the founder Virgin Group in person of Richard Branson. He's written over Africa's tech and startup ecosystem for Forbes, CNN, and The Guardian in London, and shadowed Nelson Mandela. He was named in GQ's top 30 men in media and The Mail, and also Guardian newspaper's influential young South African. He has featured in the New York Times. GQ said he has become the most high-profile technology journalist in the country. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives us the great honor to invite our keynote speaker, an ICT journalist from the city of Gold, Johannesburg, South Africa. Please put your hands together for Mr. Toby Shapshak. Can we please put your hands together for Mr. Toby as he comes all the way from the city of Gold. I appreciate you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you all hear me? So just while I'm plugging my laptop in, I brought something to show you. It's a piece of fiber. Someone's going to hand one around, just in case no one's ever seen what fiber actually looks like, because it's truly remarkable, right? You see that? You can't see that. You can't even see it. It's the width of my finger. It's the width of a piece of human hair. That's how small it is. So what we're going to talk about, devilishly handsome but not very bright, as one of my friends once said about me. We have the presentation up. So what we're going to talk about are lessons for a connected Africa. What will Africa look like when we have all of this remarkable internet connectivity available to all of us? But let's just take a step back quickly and look at where we were 19 years ago, right? When The Economist published this article, and frankly, it was probably true. But within 10 years of that, something quite remarkable had happened. We had a different narrative about Africa, Africa Rising. Probably spoken about 10 different conferences called Africa Rising. Bizarrely, none of them actually in Africa. And what we started noticing very soon thereafter was just how much growth there was in the continent. 6 of the 10 fastest growing economies were in Africa. It's down to about 2 out of 10 at the moment, but it just shows you the state of readiness that we have for huge growth. Hans Rosling is a remarkable statistician. If you've never seen his TED Talks about the numbers of life, how much older we're living, how much child mortality has dropped, how much everyone's mortality has increased. He's really fantastic. He makes numbers dance in a way that state accountants wish they could. And what it means really is that not only will we have a surge of population from the 1.1 billion people on Africa today to about 4 billion, and that something like 4 out of 10 people in the world will be Africans, but we will have the largest workforce on the planet. 1 out of 5 young people will be African. And we are now at the same point China was when its boom years began. We have what sociologists and economists call the population dividend, the population bulge, young people who are able to do amazing things with the technology that's available to them. We also already have this secret ingredient, don't we, called the middle class. The middle class already represent 1/3 of our population, 350 million plus people. And they are the people who do things. Probably everybody in this room is defined as the middle class. We're the people who have cell phones, we're the people who take out mortgages, we buy cars, in essence, we buy shit. Don't believe me? Believe him. Barack Obama was in South Africa a few years ago. He traveled around Africa, but when this picture was taken, he was talking about an initiative called Power for All, where the Americans were going to spend $7 billion boosting power, access to electricity, access to power for people. And what I like about it is his honesty. Of course it's going to uplift people, but also we're going to be able to sell you things. I mean, I think he probably meant iPads, right? He's like way hipper than iPods. I mean, they don't even make them anymore. So let's just take a look at where we've come from, right? Because Africa is the fastest growing and has been the fastest growing region for mobile devices. Eric Schmidt, the CEO of Google at the time, stood up about 10 years ago at a big conference in Barcelona called Mobile World Congress, and he said, Google is a mobile-first company. They program for mobile before they program for desktop or anything else. And I thought about it, and I wrote a piece for CNN, and I said, Africa is mobile only. We never had the desktop. We never had the old legacy systems that built companies like Microsoft, because we didn't have desktops. We couldn't afford them. And yet with mobile phones, we've been able to leapfrog so significantly forward. Let's just take a look at where we've come from, right? That's what a computer used to look like. You can see it's so old that the music medium of the day was the LP. It's so old, Michael Jackson used to be black and alive. And that's what the computer of today looks like. That's what the internet used to look like. And that's what the internet looks like now. That's what telephony used to look like. Actually, yesterday I popped into Nitel and I took a picture. Don't laugh, that's the upgraded system. This is what telephony looks like now. I took this picture in New York about 4 years ago, and this woman really was walking down the street having a voice call. She could have been using any one of those services. If you walk down the street today, the only thing that would have changed is she'd have Bluetooth headphones. I did notice afterwards that the book in her hand was Where Medieval Meets Modern, which is a pretty good way of describing New York. That's what music used to look like. I'm sure you've seen this joke on the internet. The youth of today do not know the relationship between these two devices. Right? I see you do, sir. That's what photography used to look like. The great Nikon F4, used by photojournalists to document the Vietnam War, amongst other things. This is what photography looks like now. And instead of taking pictures of New York or Moscow and saying, look, I was there, we've gone to the place where we take pictures of who we're with. And frankly, I have to agree with Michelle Obama, David Cameron is not that impressive. And that was taken before Brexit. What were they thinking? This is an illustration of what, so this is the previous Pope's inauguration, 2005. I'm Jewish, I know there's a bigger word that's not inauguration. but all you Christians look the same to us. And you can see there's just one device right in the corner. Now, the current Pope's inauguration, just 5 years ago, look at the difference. Profound difference. People have these devices on themselves all the time. Can you all hear me? Okay. I'm being told to move my microphone up. Either that or I'm supposed to speak louder or grow taller. So, welcome to the future. Welcome to Africa. Why do we live in the future? Why are we there? Well, this is my theory about innovation in Africa and why it's better. And the reason is because we have real problems. And when we have real problems, we have to solve those problems. And we solve those problems in a way that is quite profound because it turns out the whole world has the same problems. Funke came back to Nigeria in 2005 and discovered there was no decent internet access. So she built an undersea cable. $240 million later, you get some of the best internet connectivity here in Africa that you do anywhere in the world. We have great services like M-Pesa, right? M-Pesa is a brilliant way to send money to people. Well, why did we need something like that? Sorry. Why did we need services like that? Because in Africa, it's very hard to send $5 to your parents or grandparents who live in a rural village. In America, it's easy. There's ways to transfer it. In Africa, there wasn't. And that's why something like M-Pesa emerged. The GSMA, the governing body for cell phone communication companies in the world, says half of all mobile money solutions are in Africa. We are using mobiles in a way that the so-called developed world hasn't caught up with yet. I took this picture in Dar es Salaam. I was asking this motorbike driver what kind of things he used with it, and I said, "Can I take a picture?" And he went, "Whoa, whoa, whoa." Put on his sunglasses. He said, "Okay, now you can take the picture." This guy is using a cell phone in the middle of nowhere. I think of him as like the Che Guevara of mobile in Africa. Every conference you go to, somebody puts up this picture, and he could be doing anything with his phone. If he's using M-Pesa, he could be paying for school fees. He could be DSTV license. He could be doing just anything. But what he's definitely doing is using pay-as-you-go. This whole idea of prepaid mobile devices or a prepaid way of paying for something didn't really exist until the early 90s. And it was a South African company, Vodacom, a subsidiary of Vodafone, that pioneered this and made it mass market. There was one Portuguese operator that did a small case, but it was really an African company that took this concept and made it go mainstream. And that is quite remarkable. If you think about that, at the fundamental level of a business process, we're talking about innovating the business process level. The last time we had such a radical transformation of how we do business was when franchising became a thing. So Colonel Harlan Saunders, he went around selling this idea of, having a restaurant that people could own and manage. Before that, you owned and managed your parents' business. If your parents were a blacksmith, you were a blacksmith. If your parents had a retail store, you took over the store from them. Generally, that was its way. And along came this guy who had this idea. It wasn't 11 secret herbs and spices. They're no longer secret, by the way. That's the list of the menu. One of his late wives' idiot nephews showed a reporter the handwritten notes and then tried to say, no, that's not what they are. But it was this idea, this fundamental idea of taking someone else's brand and managing it. The next great thing is pay-as-you-go. Pay-as-you-go has fundamentally transformed how people pay for services. IBM calls it on-demand. You see it in the cloud space all the time. I looked at the KFC Twitter handle the other day, and I was very amused to discover that they follow the 5 Spice Girls and 6 men called Herb. So whenever you talk about innovation in Africa, people put up this picture. It's a very beautiful picture of Africa from space, right? And they say, look, it's very beautiful. They look at Africa and they go, oh, it's the dark continent. I don't think so. I think this is a map of innovation. Very easy to read map of innovation. Everywhere there's electricity, there's no innovation. Why? Because when you've got electricity, what are you doing? You're watching television or playing Pokemon Go or Fortnite now that it's come to mobiles. Without power, the economy doesn't function. Any economy doesn't function. I took this picture the last time I was here. I always joke in South Africa that when you can hear a police car siren or a car alarm playing our national anthem, would it be right to say the sound of the generator is the Nigerian national anthem? Why are we using electricity from a fossil fuel when above us in the sky we have a nuclear reactor? Africa in general has 300 days of sunshine every single year. We have a free source of electricity right above us, and it's clever companies that are finding ways to put solar panels into the hands of what the economists and the sociologists call the bottom of the pyramid, right? Those people, the very poor people, the majority of the people who live in Africa right there at the bottom of the pyramid. Companies like M-Kopa in Kenya are doing very clever things. They looked at what the cost of buying paraffin or illuminating fluid was over a year. It's about $200, and they got people to put down a $50 deposit. And then for the same amount of money every day, which was 53 Kenyan shillings, which is the same amount people pay for paraffin or illuminating fluid, people pay off this device. And it's a very clever one. There you have the base unit, you have a couple of lights built in, you can charge your cell phone, you can charge your neighbors to charge their cell phone. They've got a rechargeable radio and a rechargeable torch. Whenever I speak in America, I have to call it a flashlight. But what's profound about this is after you've paid it off over a year, and it's the same amount of money you would have spent anyway on paraffin, you own it. Now that is economic upliftment. This is solving problems in a really smart way. It's often called frugal innovation or innovation out of necessity. The fact that we have no alternative to solving our own problems than to solve them ourselves means we come up with really clever and cost-effective and cheap ways of doing it. Turns out the same problems we have, lack of access to electricity, lack of access to the internet, lack of access to online services, are the same problems the world has. When we solve them for ourselves, we solve them for the rest of the world. Of course, the biggest enabler of so much of this is connectivity. Who's got the piece of fiber? Hey? It's still moving around the room. Isn't it amazing? Here's my little piece. It's the size of a human hair. That little piece of connectivity brings us all the wonders of the internet. This is just a demonstration of how much connectivity has flowed into the continent since 2010. That's on the right. And on the left is this year's map. A very well-known guy called Steve Song, who is an activist for African telecommunications, puts together this map just to show how much connectivity there is in terms of undersea cables. And it just shows you how much things have grown in the time they have. MainOne is the brown one over there. You can see down the side of it. And it's this kind of connectivity that brings us all the wonders of the internet, doesn't it? Of course, you can now stay in an Airbnb themed like Netflix, because that's not creepy or anything, right? But then again, not everybody understands all of the joys that the internet brings to us, does it? And it's more than entertainment, it's education. These young kids can get as good an education as they can anywhere in the world that has the power of the internet connectivity. High broadband places like New York or London or California. I mean, I was joking about New York, right? Impossible to get a decent signal, I'm told. It's true. I was telling Funke yesterday that I had a profound experience. I have fiber to the home in South Africa, 100 megabits up and down. And I feel like I belong to the internet 1%. It's quite profound to go overseas as I did last year. I went to Paris and I went to Germany, and I had a better connection at home in Johannesburg than any of these European capitals. That didn't occur 15, 20 years ago, and yet it's thanks to people like Funke and MainOne that the continent is getting such a leg up. You know, I look at this picture and I think about the computer that these kids are using, right? It's a tablet. It's a tablet. There was a time where education was so difficult on computer when I was at school a very long time ago. The nerds, you know, that's why I love this conference. Nerds Unite. What a great name, right? Revenge of the Nerds. Dun, dun, dun. Remember that cheesy 80s movie? Anyway, that is the computer of today. It's also the smartphone. Our smartphones, as I showed you in the beginning, do everything that a whole bunch of other devices we no longer need. Cameras, compasses, calculators, video cameras. We do not need anything else. We can just have one device and it can open up so many new possibilities for us. But thinking forward, what are some of those other possibilities? My son is 20 months old, nearly 2 years. Only parents with small children speak in months, by the way. So nearly 2 years. I'm thinking about the kinds of skills he's going to need in life to get ahead, right? The chances are he's never going to learn to touch type. When I was studying journalism, my first year in journalism, 1989, the only people who needed to touch type as a business critical skill in life were secretaries and journalists. Within 4 years, by the time I finished my degree, everybody was learning to touch type in primary school in South Africa, and that's the case around the world. Touch typing is now an absolutely essential business skill. Will my son ever learn to touch type? Probably not. Why should he? We talk to each other. The interface between human beings is our voice, it's our eyes. Artificial intelligence and machine learning is getting really good. These are all the smart assistants that you can get at the moment that allow you to talk to the internet. Without connectivity, that's simply not possible. Without this fiber, and undersea cables, we are not able to have that kind of really fast throughput. And sure, you can watch Netflix and Showmax and other things, but for now, we're looking at some of the great things. So the internet, in a way, is a bit like an iceberg, isn't it? That's the part of the iceberg that we see. That's the part of the world that's connected, the part above the surface. It's everybody underneath, and it's all of the things underneath that we haven't reached there. Steve Song, the brilliant telecoms activist, has a really good way of summing it up. We've reached a point where we've connected the easy to connect half. For the first time in many, many years, cell phone sales have started to dip in the last 2 years. Africa's growth in terms of mobile uptake has started to dip. Why? Because we've gotten to the low-hanging fruit. It's the more challenging stuff that we need to get to. And what we need to start doing is dropping the level of the ocean or the level of connectivity and getting more of the iceberg up there. I don't know how to use Photoshop. I'm sorry, I had to just put in these funny red lines. But you know what I mean, right? Like that's the level of the ocean, you know. That's the kind of challenge that faces us now. That's what we need to do to connect up the next billion people on the continent. Because if we are growing at the pace we are, we need to start thinking about what jobs are the youngsters going to do, right? A lot of you in this room qualify as youngster, but give you 20 years, that's the definition of a generation. It's going to be your job like it is my job and us older people to find jobs for the youth to do. What are they going to do? Well, it's all going to be around mobile devices, isn't it? We're going to talk to our devices. We're going to talk into the services, and we're going to access cloud-based services. But there's something important going on here. It's very important to own what Marx would have called the means of production. If you do not own the connectivity, you're always paying rent. It's something Steve Song calls fiber feudalism. If you do not own the fiber and the connection and the undersea cable, you're always paying rent to someone else. And it's a fundamental roadblock to broadband development, as he said. Otherwise we're all going to be the servants in Downton Abbey, even if the building looks so good. It's a great story. The family that owned, it's called Highclere Castle. in Berkshire. They owned this building and they were about to sell it because they just couldn't make any money. And then the TV show came out, and now they've got so much money from tourism, they don't know what to do with themselves. Because the next big challenge for the internet isn't the people. The coming 5G revolution with its incredibly fast data speeds and access to information is all about the Internet of Things, isn't it? We had a tipping point in 2010. It wasn't that Africa got to host the World Cup for the first time. It was that more things got connected to the internet than people. Ericsson says by 2020, that's next year, by 2020, 50 billion devices are going to be connected. It's going to be security cameras. I don't know why people always use fridges. Our fridge will be connected to the internet. God forbid we run out of orange juice. I don't even like orange juice. We'll be doing things like social media. I think we're going to live in a post-social media world. I don't really have much data to prove it, apart from the fact that we've all been burned so much by our personal data being exposed as it has been, and all of the data breaches. I mean, a sure sign that we've reached a level of depravity is the fact that the most liked Instagram post of all time is an egg. The egg's name is Eugene, by the way. And somebody looked at it at the beginning of the year and said, it can't be possible that Kylie Jenner has the most liked Instagram post. She had 18 million views. They quickly overtook them to get 18.2, and the last time I looked, which was last night, they had 54 million likes on Instagram of an egg. And that's got to tell us there's something wrong. I mean, anyway, thanks, Eugene. We're going to start doing much more interesting things with the internet, aren't we? Apart from, looking at cat videos and entertainment, we're going to start looking at very useful devices. I went to go see Flutterwave yesterday. Great idea, right? Everybody's got a payment mechanism. They don't all work. Let's make them work together. These are the kinds of financial services, fintech, agricultural services that we're going to see more and more and more, because these are the things that we desperately need. Places like CC Hub allow clever startups to build clever services. When I was there earlier last year, and I said to him, "Oh, your internet's great." They went, "MainOne," They didn't ask me to say this, but I can tell you, every time I go to any company in Nigeria and say good internet, they all say MainOne. They say it in the kind of way people go, mainline. They're like, well done. One of the great advantages that something like Flutterwave and M-Pesa and all the other mobile services do is offer e-commerce. But e-commerce still has to be delivered, right? Somebody has to actually physically deliver something to your house. And if they don't know what your address is, that's really a problem. So along comes this great little company called What 3 Words. It's a British startup. They've done a deal with the Nigerian Post Office. They have got 5 trillion of these 9-meter little squares all over the world described by 3 words. I think that's MainOne's offices. Beans Giggled Packets. Hello, I live at Beans Giggled Packet. Please, can I have a packet of beans? You can see the e-commerce possibility, right? It makes anywhere an identifiable place on a map that you can deliver things to people. This is another great example. This is a system built by a Kenyan company called Brick. That little thing is called a super brick. It looks like that. And it's basically a box with the internet in it, for want of another way to describe it. It's got 4 or 6 terabytes of hard drive space. And instead of people in a village going to the internet, it brings the internet to them. This is the first village they set up in Rwanda, and there was 1 smartphone when they got there. Within a month, there were 30 smartphones. That's the interesting thing. When you give people access to the power of the internet and everything that it can do, it enables people to jump onto the information superhighway, as it was originally called. Solar-powered, very low cost to run the network. These are the kinds of solutions that we're starting to see. It's made by a company called Vanu. The late CEO's name's Vanu Bose. Bose, you recognize, his father was the man who invented all that sound system. He's the man who's trying to bring, or was trying to bring, his company Lives On, internet access. Very clever, very smart. This is the Superbrick offices in Kenya. One of the board members of Cambridge Analytica came to have a look at the new technology. That was a joke, thank you. And because of the influx of connectivity, companies like Andela can flourish. They just did another $100 million round of financing, right? It just shows you, yes, they deserve a round of applause. They really do, because it shows you, it's a great example of taking Africa's incredible talent and putting us to work in a way that is meaningful for us and meaningful for other companies. Andela's customers are Viacom, GitHub, that Microsoft just bought for $7 billion something. It's quite remarkable. Once you have connectivity, you have all sorts of useful artificial intelligence services. I went on holiday to Italy last year. The day we got there, my son had a fever. He was listless. He was lolling around. My wife and I were freaking out. We drove 2 towns over to find the only pediatrician in the southern part of Italy. He didn't speak any English. I don't speak much Italian apart from capisce. You know, comes from watching the Godfather movies, capisce. And there I was using Microsoft's a translate app to get him in real time. That's what he was saying in Italian at the top to translate. I mean, you got a couple of funny things. I'm not quite sure what the secret pronky was. But we got enough information using this app to understand how to give him medication, bring his fever down, and sort all of those things out. We've already had a fantastic vision of the future, right? Ta-da! It turns out the most sophisticated place in the world is always in Africa. I've been reading graphic novels since I was a kid. Of course they're true, you know. I mean, I grew up in an age where reading superhero comics was a fringe thing. Now it's part of the mainstream. In the same way that those elitist services from the developed world seemed like a fringe thing, soon that's going to be our everyday reality. Technology has changed things so significantly that we've had to redraw Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Turns out accommodation is not as important as Wi-Fi, right? Anyone who's ever been overseas will know that. You can stand in the rain as long as you can check your email or, you know, respond to something on Twitter. But there's a lesson in all of this, and it's something that Steve Jobs summed up in this quote. If you don't cannibalize yourself, somebody else will. I bet you don't know who this man is. He's the most famous inventor you've never heard of. His name's Steve Sassoon. And in 1976, when this picture was taken, he invented the digital camera. Guess who he worked for? Anyone? Kodak. And it is a singular demonstration of their failure to see that if you don't cannibalize yourself, someone else will. You think that's pie in the sky? Ask the taxi industry what they think about Uber, or the hotel industry what they think about Airbnb. You know that Airbnb is the largest provider of hotel accommodation. 1.5 million people, according to recent statistics, stay every single night in, 1 million people stay every single night in 1.5 million houses around the world. 174 countries they operate in. They don't own one bed, and yet they are the largest provider of accommodation in the world. That's really profound. When I was walking out of CC Hub the last time I was here, I saw this across the road and I took a picture. And it's a really worthwhile thing to remember. Be the one to happen to life. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, can we once again appreciate our keynote speaker all the way from the city of gold, Johannesburg. Thank you so much, sir. Awesome. And so very shortly, you will be leading us in the panel session, the first one. Do you mind having your seat, sir? Thank you so much. You can see that this keynote speaker is very humble. He even helped me to arrange. Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate you. Once again, can we appreciate him so much? Thank you. And now we'll go straight to the panel session, which will take, if you have a copy of the program with you, take some few minutes to do that. Well, are you ready? Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great honor